welcome back to the SilmFilm Script Discussion Season 3, Episode 2. We're not doing parts tonight because I don't know where I'm going to split up the previous segment, which was super long. So, yeah. Anyway, we've got a couple of comments to respond to. During the break, I was actually reading the actual lines from Eonwe and from Feanor. And Dave said that this line is going to need a preface, otherwise it sounds like the messenger is speaking and not Manwe, which is true. Yes. He's going to need to say something to suggest that Manwe that this is a message from Manwe. Brian asked, do we show anyone else other than Feanor reacting to Eonwe's proclamation? Yes, we should definitely be seeing other people's faces. Are any of Fingolfin's party dismayed by this, or does anyone waver? I think we have to be very careful with this, because the text specifically points out that none of the Noldor refused to go because they were afraid.
Right.
Some of them stayed because they loved the Valar, Olwe not the least of which, and some of them stayed because they liked the works of their hands too greatly.
Tyrion, for instance.
Yeah, right. But none of them left out of fear. None of them stayed out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if we, especially given what Eonwe says here, if we have anybody turn back after Eonwe's message, it's gonna, like, there's no way that it's not gonna look like they're scared.
I don't think we're gonna have any way to turn back, but I think we should show some doubts. So it's clear that Feanor doesn't necessarily control this whole mob of people nearly as well as he thinks he does.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the doubt that should be introduced here is, are all these people actually 100% behind Feanor? And if they're showing some distrust, that's good for showing that they're not just a, hive mind of a single mind about this whole thing.
Okay.
But they still go. You're right. They're not afraid, so they don't turn back. But they might not 100% agree with Feanor.
Okay. Because I feel like the way to show that is to have somebody try to talk Fingolfin into turning back.
Mm.
But we kind of just did that. I mean, whatever it is, it can be an Act 2 thing. It can happen after.
Yeah. Fingolfin and Finarfin should definitely share a significant glance after Eonwe's pronouncement.
Yeah.
Like, they just had a conversation about whether or not it's a good idea to follow their older brother, and this should be more evidence that it's maybe not the brilliant idea.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not going to speak out against him at this point either. Feanor hasn't done anything to lose their faith. So as much as they might as much as his half brothers might distrust him,
right,
they're not going to try to turn people against him yet.
What we might see
mm-hmm.
is we might see the amassed host start to kind of like murmur amongst themselves after Eonwe delivers his message.
Mm-hmm.
And then have Feanor jump up on something to deliver his reply.
Yes. Okay. Because it does make a point of saying that Feanor's rhetoric is so forceful at this point that even Eonwe feels like he's been answered sufficiently, despite the fact that what Feanor says is not actually an answer.
Right. Right.
So it kind of should be spillover from his speech in the last episode that when he opens his mouth, everyone just assumes that what he's saying makes sense because he just has that effect on people.
Right.
Very convincing.
Yes.
And if we see him be convincing to Eonwe, then of course he can convince his own people. So yeah, he should be able to get everyone back on the right track as soon as Eonwe steps away.
Right.
Which will make it all the more shocking when Olwe doesn't buy it later.
Yeah.
if even Eonwe buys into what Feanor's saying, how come Olwe doesn't fall for it?
Agreed. Okay. So that's Act 1.
Mm-hmm.
We need to figure out whether we believe that the actual physical conflict of the kinslaying is enough to carry us through half the episode.
Yeah, I know.
Do we want to do that and then go back?
Yeah. Well, no, I'm sorry. Part of me wants to just figure out we should figure out what needs to happen before the kinslaying.
Right.
Figure out what those scenes are and see how much time they take up. Because I would much rather drag out the kinslaying than drag out filler for the lead up to the kinslaying and then squish the kinslaying in. That seems like a terrible idea. So let's figure out what scenes we need in Act 2. And if we're done everything that isn't a fight by the end of Act 2, then we're done and we go into the kinslaying. If we still have more stuff to have happen, then the kinslaying doesn't have to break out till partway through Act 3 or the end of Act 3 or whatever. Like I'm not married to a particular idea of exactly how long the kinslaying needs to be.
Okay.
But I am against filler scenes.
Yes, I agree. I agree. I have been forced to come up with them, but then only in a way that actually makes the story bigger, like tells the story more.
Oh, I'm fine with filling out a story. If we need to show a scene of how somebody gets to the point they are later, most of what Tolkien tells us are like climactic things. So obviously there's build up to get to there.
Right.
The issue of I don't want pointless filler scenes. Like there has to be building towards something.
Right. Okay. So one thing that if Maedhros is our point of view character for the Feanorian bit, we need to give him something to do when we get to Aqualande.
Right. There's some question as to how much Feanor discusses versus how much he orders.
Right.
And I have to imagine he is the personality type that shouts out orders and expects to be followed rather than bothers to stop and explain why he's doing things.
He's not Picard. He's Kirk.
He is not. Well, I'm not even sure. I don't think he's Kirk, but he's not Picard. I'll give you that. So the question is if there's any exceptions to that, if he bothers with his sons or with some of his followers. You get the impression he always bothered with his wife, but she's not in here anymore. She's gone as of episode 1. So she's not around to talk to. And if it's not his wife and it's not his father, I don't think he has the time of day for anybody.
Right. I agree.
So knowing that about him and knowing a little bit about Maedhros being someone who likes to think things through, I don't think Feanor's going to sit down and tell Maedhros what he's planning. But Maedhros is going to ask.
Yeah.
So we can kind of craft some scenes where Maedhros is like, okay, reporting in, we got everybody moving out, we're doing good. So what's the next step here? Like, catch me up. Like Maedhros is going to have reasons to come talk to Feanor, but at the same time kind of push him for some more information. And the question is whether what Feanor tells him. Because Maedhros is going to want to know the plan. So that he can work towards it. Like he's trying to be a good second in command because he doesn't trust Godolphin and Finarfin any more than Feanor does at this point, probably. Well, maybe like a smidgen more.
That's way better than the only thing that I could come up with, which was having him like kind of investigating the ships, which the only dialogue that came to mind was it was kind of like, that's a nice ship. Be a shame if somebody stole it.
Let's not do that. I say ixnay on that. I mean, they can sound, but I mean, for a later scene, if we get to the point where Feanor is getting ready to attack the harbor, he might send someone down to check it out first, just to see how many ships there are and how many, how they're arranged to come back and make the plan. So he could even tell his sons, please go scope it out for me, without telling them what they're doing next.
Mm.
Like, he could send them on a recon mission without saying, okay, now go steal them.
Yeah.
So,
well,
I mean,
it also gets us a closer look at the ships if we do send them out there to do that.
Yeah, so I mean, like, we can have steps in this progression. It's just I don't expect Feanor to be standing there explaining his next move to anybody. Like, that's the usual role of the second in command, is let me tell you what the point of what we're doing is. Like, Feanor doesn't do that. He just says, go do this. Why? Because I said so. Like, I give the orders, you obey. That's what we do here.
Well, as they're coming down into Aquilande, we can give Feanor some exposition with Maedhros to explain what's about to happen. The intention was always to talk the Teleri into coming with them.
Mm-hmm. We should give that away, yes, because we kind of want to know that before Feanor steps into the debate he's going to take part in.
We want to know what Feanor wants to do before he ruins it.
Right. We want to see what the goal was. And since it's not going to play out the way he wants, we need to establish the goal beforehand. But we should be in the... Like, he's not just explaining to Maedhros. He would have to be like, okay, come with me. We need to get the Teleri on board. They'll be good allies in this. So we need to go talk to Olwe.
Right.
And the question is, who comes with for that debate? We could have Maedhros.
He would have to be there. Yeah.
If anybody's going to come with, it'll be him. So it makes sense that if there's a little contingency, but probably not all of the sons, because some of them aren't going to know what happened in that debate, so that Feanor can tell them, Olwe totally insulted us. Like, Feanor has to have his version come back to his followers, which involves them not being eyewitnesses. But if Maedhros was an eyewitness and thinks his father's view is skewed, that kind of leads to the later difference of opinion. Like,
right. And also, well, and also, here's the thing. Like, he may, because Maedhros is relatively pragmatic.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Maedhros could buy into this idea that Feanor is intentionally misleading his people because he needs to, because he doesn't have he has to get them across.
Yeah. Maedhros is 100% on board with, we need the ships. Like, he's sold on that. So something Feanor has said to him has convinced him of that. And he's a proud Noldor. So if he thinks Olwe has insulted him, he will take that just as personally as any other Noldor. Like, he might be somewhat diplomatic, but he's not, like, immune to that. So if he's feeling slighted, then he'll be angry and he'll go along with whatever Feanor says in his version as just, out of anger.
So Dave asks if it's possible the Feanorians might try to recruit some individual Teleri against the will of Olwe. I don't know about individuals, because then we would have to have named characters in order for it to matter. What we should do, though, is have Feanor addressing Olwe in an open setting. Like, it's not just Olwe there.
Right. Because he has an eye to the other Teleri, and Olwe's court should be made up of, like, master shipbuilders and people like that.
Right.
So
the captains of all the ships.
Exactly. That's who would be in the court.
Right. And, like, the text actually directly says that the Teleri were not swayed. It wasn't it says, but the Teleri were unmoved by aught that he could say. They were grieved indeed at the going of their kinsfolk and long friends, but would rather dissuade them than aid them. Which Olwe is going to be the voice, obviously, but showing that the Teleri themselves are not moved by this is going to be, a big part of this, because we want to show that it's not just
Olwe. It's his people too. He does speak for his people, and not just because he's the leader. He understands the needs of the people.
Right.
And that's something that Feanor does not understand. Like, it should be clear that Feanor does not get the Teleri on any level. Right. And that's why he fails here. Because if he did, he could be devious enough to say what they needed to hear to accomplish what he needed to accomplish.
Right.
If he knew what that was. Like if he knew what the key was to unlocking them, he'd say it.
Right.
Regardless of whether or not it was true, or he would strike, and he doesn't, so he doesn't know. He has no idea.
Right. Well, it's kind of like when you hear about Melkor trying to subvert somebody, and then be like, no. There's a lot of that going on too. Sauron with the dwarves, with his inability to recruit the dwarves at the rings, he clearly just doesn't get them at all.
Right, and there's lots of levels where you think these people should be able to figure it out. Like Sauron was one of Olwe's people. You'd think he could figure out the dwarves. Feanor is a craftsman. The Teleri are saying these ships are precious to us because we made them. Like the Teleri know how to speak Feanor's language because he just made his whole impassioned spiel about recovering his precious jewels, and they're like, yes, what we care about are ships, and we're never giving them up either. Like, so they try to speak his language, but he doesn't speak theirs. And
right.
It's a misstep. And I think that Tolkien intentionally uses evil viewpoints as being limited and having a loss of creativity.
Right.
So Feanor's failure here is symptomatic of his fall. Like the reason he can't have this conversation with Olwe is because he is too caught up in his own revenge to see through someone else's eyes anymore.
Right.
So like a younger, less angry Feanor could have maybe figured this out.
Right. So we have Feanor entering Aqualande. Maybe he sends one or two of them, of his sons, to go and let Olwe know that they're there, that he wants to meet with them, and blah, 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 blah. We have a scene going through, like, kind of looking over the ships and stuff like that, because we need to be relatively familiar with them before we get to the actual kinslaying. Dave asked, what are we going to have Feanor request? Does he want passage, or does he actually want the ships? He's got to start out asking for passage.
Yes.
And for backup, essentially. The Teleri are the most numerous, even after losing like
most of the people.
The people, they're still the most numerous there. So
his first goal is to convert them to his side and join their force to his. So he wants them to join his rebellion and be part of what he's doing, so that he has a bigger army and all that. When they aren't interested in joining him, then he wants passage. When they refuse that, he's like, well, I just want the ships then. I don't need you at all. To which they're like, hell no. But
if you think that I'm going to give you my ships, you have another thing coming, Buster.
Which is when the negotiation falls apart. But that's the progression. We do need Earwen to be there before all of this. She needs to get there before Feanor. So that the first thing after the Eonwe scene, like after we're done dealing with whatever aftermath of that, we do need to do the Earwen and Olwe scene.
Right. Okay. Yep. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's issues with having her there, but we should deal with those issues instead of avoiding them.
Right. Okay. So we have her enter Aqualande. What is their conversation about? Because if we give, does she just say that? Did Feanor send her?
No. There's no way he would. Feanor would not let her speak for him. Even though it should be really obvious, he has a sister-in-law who's the daughter of the king. Like, make use of her. Feanor's not going to do that. He's very much distrusting of his half-siblings and their wives. So
they're non-Noldor wives with their
with
their queer ways of thinking and
So she has to be there on her own. and she has to be speaking for herself, not for her people. But she has to not betray the Noldor in this. Like, she can't look like she's running ahead to give warning that the British are coming, the British are coming. Like, that's not what this is, even though it kind of is.
Right. Well, she could be asking Olwe. Well, she could be asking him for counsel. What does he think that she should do?
Okay. Yeah, because it should not necessarily, well, because we've already had the scene with the potential farewells where the wives are like, we're not coming. But maybe that's not what the wives said in that scene. Maybe they said, we'll come with you part way, or we're not sure about this, or, you know, something.
Yeah.
And then, so she's like, let me go talk to my father if, you know, decide if I'm going to say goodbye to him or you.
Right.
Not even realizing that Feanor is going to come and request that the Teleri join.
Right. Right.
So yeah, she just has to be bearing news, but she can't repeat what already happened because, again, telling the audience something they already know.
Right.
So she has to tell Olwe about what happened in Tyrion without just repeating it. So it has to be her opinion that we haven't really heard yet, like her spin on everything. And I mean, her character can be whatever we want it to be. She could be.
Well, her spin could be like, because we've seen a lot of what the lords of the Noldor are thinking.
Right.
But she could give us an insight on what the average Joe who lives in Tyrion is thinking.
Right. Like, I'm thinking that she's been a very minor character, as in we've had her do almost absolutely nothing up to this point. So she's obviously not super involved in the court or all the arguments and the drama that's been going on. She's stepped back from all that. So it's possible that the people of Tyrion are who she spends time with, or you know, her children, or, you know, whatever, that she's involved in a different aspect of the court. And so yeah, she could be giving an outsider view a little bit of what just happened, and explain that the Noldor are afraid and angry, and that they've lost their king, and, you know, that things are a little chaotic right now. You know, like, she could kind of put that spin on it to Olwe. And
that you know,
and he's like, you know, get it sorted. Like, this is not the end of the world.
Yeah. So he's going. So the opinion that he expresses to her is to have faith in what the Valar are going to do.
Right. That, yes, it looks bleak right now, but wait for their counterstrike and everything will be fine.
Right. It's not like they haven't handled him before, you know.
Right. They know how to deal with Melkor, and
Olwe has personally seen the result of that.
How so?
Because, well, not
the
personally,
island,
but he's experienced the War of the Powers, at least from a distance.
Oh yes, okay, yes.
He knows better than anyone in that room what the Valar are capable of.
Right, and that's the whole second generation thing. The people, the ones born in Valinor who don't have any memory of Middle Earth, versus the ones who came on the journey. Like, so Olwe is a good voice for the older generation of, we've seen what the Valar can do. Don't worry about it. They, you know, Melkor, sure, he's powerful, sure, he's scary, sure, he did some bad things, but he's no match for them.
Right.
Okay.
And if she's really pressing on the issue of Finway's death, Olwe can remind us what death means to the elves also.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that we don't know, but like, it wouldn't kill us to, you know, get a quick reminder.
We need it here before this happens, because as the host figured out, if death doesn't mean the same thing to the elves as to men, then you have to, like, remind your audience what it does mean, because it's different and they view things differently, and that's not how it works for us. So it's not an automatic insight.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, here's the thing. Like, and if you can have Olwe specifically call out that he doesn't have a fear of death, it does help with the host's thing of like not having him attempt to defend himself against Feanor when Feanor attacks him. The problem is that you don't get onto a ship with people who don't want you on it without having to fight through to get up there. That's the issue I have with that whole thing.
Yeah, a lot of movies like to do that. Like, I am the good guy, so after I disarm my opponent, I will turn my back and say, don't worry, I will let you live because I'm the good guy. Of course, the bad guy will then betray him by going for his alternate weapon and trying to stab him in the back, and then he will quickly turn around and kill him anyway. Like, that whole scenario is completely unrealistic in that that's not how things play out. But a lot of movies use that to make the good guy still look like a good guy and not a vicious killer.
Right.
So we do have to make Olwe look like a good guy.
Right.
But I don't think we should make him a pacifist.
Right.
Like, he's not a refusing to wield weapons kind of guy. He's just But doesn't fear death is a good place for him to be. And I want to contrast the calmness of the Teleri with the fear of the Noldor. Because even though none of them are turning back because of fear, it doesn't mean they're not reacting out of fear.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, like, they are afraid. They're not afraid of this journey. They're not afraid of doing something dangerous or potentially rash. But they are fearful. Whereas the Teleri are calm.
Yes, I agree.
The Noldor are very...
Yeah. Well, my timer just went off for us to take a break, so I'm going to do that because Marie just froze again. So if you're watching us live, hang in there. We'll be back in a second. If you're watching us on YouTube in the future, definitely like and share the videos. If you like and want to share them, like button should be general that one of these sides on one of those sides. Anyway, if you haven't yet, subscribe because then you can get notifications as to when things are happening, which cool stuff. Check out the forums. Good stuff on there. Get involved. We need more people. It'd be awesome for you to get more involved. Anyway, be back in a minute.